Welcome to the On the Slab Horror Show with me, Ian Kelly, your host for the day. And today we welcome a very familiar face to some of you who are very, very kind enough and loyal enough to support the Dynamo Podcast Network. But this familiar face has yet to appear on a couple of shows, and this is one of them. It is the shopkeeper, Niall Hogan, whether you can call him the gaffer, the shopkeeper, the coach, whatever you want. But Niall Hogan, obviously the host of the Upper Tier podcast, Shankly Sessions, Monday Mashup, and probably about 20 dozen more. He makes his debut today on the Slab. Niall, you're on the cold table today. Welcome, my friend.
Yeah, delighted to be here. I'm looking forward to this one. We spoke about it for a while, so
Yeah.
Yeah, you asked me to get into this, and it brought me on a proper trip down memory lane. This did.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice actually because with that beautiful background as well, it's kind of nice as well because to get someone like yourself who actually kind of, not that you're old, but you're a little bit older than us guys, and you would have been around to kind of go to the cinema for a lot of these movies and stuff, and kind of at a time where I dare say there was probably a little bit more innocence and naivety with viewers and stuff, where there wasn't much social media to distract you, so you were completely invested in film, which is how exactly you should watch any kind of film, in my opinion. As you know from watching these shows, myself, Carl, and Greg, we talk about atmosphere a lot. You know what I mean? That's kind of, especially with a horror movie and the horror genre, or even thrillers and suspense movies. It's all about atmosphere. And I saw from your crazy list that we've got a lot of that in there. So we're gonna have some fun today. You're in the cold room today on the cold metal table, and you're ready to be
dissected.
Dissected. So we asked you initially to pick a top 10. You picked a 23. We'll try and get a top 10 out of that 23, and then we'll maybe do some honorable mentions. So I'm sure you can go through like what you think, and we don't have to do it in any particular order unless you want to keep your favorites until the end. I'm sure you have in mind your all-time, top 2 or 3 or whatever. So let's jump right on in.
It's as you say from the list that I sent you, it's an interesting dynamic, really, because some of these are nearly comedies at this stage, more so than horrors. But horror is such a very loose description of a movie, and I grew up on a lot of these. This list that I've put together, these movies remind me of moments in my life. When I watch these movies and how I experienced them, and so it's interesting. I watched a lot of these when they would scare you. They don't necessarily scare you now, but they scared me then. So they ring true to me, if you like,
No, that makes sense. And again, you're kind of speaking a lot about what me and the King in particular speak about. Is like, you can watch these movies again and you're not waiting to be scared as such, but you're looking at it for the moments of nostalgia and the moments of just bringing you to a time of innocence in your life where it did probably scare you at that time. Do you know what I mean? And even at the same point, you could probably look at some of these movies well and go, shit, if I was to just free my mind a little bit, or if I'd done a little bit of DMT or some sort of acid, I'd be scared shit. You know what I mean?
Ayahuasca session or something.
Not that I'm, that's definitely not my bag, to be fair. I would probably be found in the Liffey somewhere. But you know what I mean? You can see why some people do hold these movies so dear, like we all do. So why don't we jump into your first movie?
Before I get into the list, I wanted to give a little bit of a background.
Okay.
I grew up, sometimes I talk in these shows and people think I'm really old.
No, you're not really old. No, you're not that much older than all of us, to be fair.
No, but I grew up at a time where, let's say, parenting was a little bit looser.
Yes.
So you were allowed to watch movies and you were allowed to absorb them, but also you were kind of allowed to hang out with your mates. So like one of my friends, my first horror movie, if you like, my first experience of it was our school when we were in primary school used to run a movie evening on after school on a Friday type of thing, but it'd be more towards say 5-6 after school, you know, and you'd pay like 50p to get in, and there'd be someone in the corner selling all sorts of sweets and stuff. And the first one I ever watched was one called Piranha, the Killer Fish.
I know it, yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. It's one with Lee Majors. Lee Majors is in it from the Bionic Man and all, the Fall Guy and all that.
Was it around 1979 or 1980 or something, or was it a little bit later?
I'd say it would have been, probably around 81, 82, I'd say.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But I always remember there was a scene in that where there was a guy in the river and he was on a pallet or something like that.
Yeah.
And he fell in and the fish just went in and tore him asunder. And I remember one of the scenes in that which triggered me a bit in terms of horror was they show a scene where some of the fish swim out of his insides and back into the sea, which was an amazing scene at the time, of course. But that was kind of my first introduction. If you
1978, so it was
78. It was
off the top of my head. I was able to, it was
good call.
Yeah,
but it was probably 81, 82 when we.
Of course, when you would have seen it, This
would have been a projector job now, you know.
Oh, 100%. The best kind.
But I often say to people, and I've said it before, that like if you were to look at my music playlist on my phone, if I lost my phone and someone found it, they would think I'm an absolute headbanger. And my movie choices are very like that as well. Insofar as I'm not really mad into slasher horrors and gore and like I wouldn't be a fan of the Saw series or any of that kind of stuff, you know.
That's weird.
That doesn't appeal to me. So I suppose where will we start? Let's pick a good one. I suppose we should start The Exorcist.
For number 10, The Exorcist. I love it. Okay. This is always going to be on everyone's list. Listen, for anybody that doesn't like The Exorcist, I mean, that Tubular Bells intro is, I mean, it's one of the most iconic pieces of music along with the Halloween intro. For you, you're only about a decade older than me, so again, you're not old, so that's what we need to allow people to remember this. But at the same time, that 10 years can be pivotal in terms of when you were growing up watching these type of movies. And I dare say, Niall, some kids still today get scared from this movie, seeing it for the first time.
Absolutely. Now again, the background to this one, I talked about parents being a little looser. One of my best friends years ago was a guy called Ken Barr, and we used to do, sleepover nights and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So we'd have movie nights and stuff like that.
The good stuff, on the weekends.
And the stories that you tell, where you go down to the video store and you get the 3 or the 4 movies for £5 for the whole weekend or whatever it is, and it was really cool at the time. But I always remember there was times as well where he was huge into horror. I wasn't mad into horror. He was huge into it. So he'd always pick, if we were picking 3 movies, to be 2 horrors and 1 generic one, let's say, but we'd watch them in his house and I'd always have to walk home, and I'd be walking home in the dark because, as I said, parenting back then, life was kind of safer and parenting was kind of looser.
Yes.
But I always remember, like, I'd watch one of those movies, like one of the old Fright Nights or something like that, and shitting yourself walking home. You'd be watching behind you, every single bush that moved with the breeze, something like that. You'd be crapping yourself and you'd be sprinting home, like, you know what I mean? And it was just
that Iron Maiden song, "Fear of the Dark," is perfectly describes that, because you'd
100%
be just
yeah, absolutely. You'd nearly be sprinting from street light to street light, that kind of way. So, like, this, the people now listening to this will think I'm ancient, but I'm not. This is mid 80s and stuff like that.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But that's what we used to do. So shout out to Ken, good friend of mine from years ago. We watched hundreds of movies over that time, But The Exorcist is classic, really, you know what I mean? Like, even the image of the man outside the house with the hat underneath the light, and the whole thing. And I was always a fan of those type of thing. I think you mentioned to me during the week, you call it kind of the dark side of things. So, I won't give too many more away, but there's a kind of a pattern that goes through this list of the kind of, I definitely have a type. And it's kind of dark more than gore. So Yeah, so I started with The Exorcist anyway, so we'll put that in at number
Well,
9.
I think it's
Again,
a
they're not in
phenomenal
any
movie.
particular order.
I think it's a phenomenal movie. It's actually funny enough. I didn't see The Exorcist until, and this is a true story, until I was about 18 when I first bought it on VHS, because I was in a very kind of, it's weird. People always hear about me talking about watching movies with my granny and all that, and I was always allowed to watch the John Carpenter stuff and the, you know what I mean, like the kind of Halloween and The Fog and stuff like that. And but when I was real young, I was never really allowed to watch some of the 18s movies because parents at that time, growing up in the late 80s to early 90s, kind of looked at it and went, no. But like they were, if there was any kind of sexual reference or anything like that, it was like, it's a no-no. Yeah. I wasn't allowed to watch it. Yeah. If it was just pure gore or whatever, boom, you're grand. And I remember being able to watch the first movie that scarred me was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is like, I mean, it is a horror, but it's a thriller. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. More so. Yeah. And you know what I mean by that. If you're a 6-year-old, 7-year-old watching that, you're like, oh, I'm writing a letter to daddy. And this lunatic walking around, I was like, shit. And then feeding her sister rats. So, but because of the Catholicism at the time, they wouldn't really allow me to watch The Exorcist. So I remember in Chapters, which was a great store here in Dublin, which is probably still around, I believe. And you know what I mean, but it's not. You could go down to Chapters and you could have like a £5 note in your pocket and come back with, 2 or 3 videos. Yeah, and The Exorcist was one that I got. And I have to say, I watched it at 18 and I made sure that I watched it in the dark. I was sitting on my laptop, on my computer at the time, but I was like, holy shit, this is actually pretty good. I mean, I wasn't as scared because I went into it being told that my parents and stuff like that and my family were so scared. So I was kind of like almost had a bit of a guard up about it. But then obviously I've seen it about 1 million times now. And every time I see it, you can see why people were absolutely terrified because it was so, and then the whole backstory of it being, being based on a true story, which it was, but it was a boy and whatnot. Yeah, great show for your first movie. I love it.
Yeah, I just remember it being absolute classic, and it just stayed with me. I like that whole world of exorcism and that Satan side of things and possessions and
the dark side, as you said.
Yeah. I think that stuff's really, really cool. I find that appealing. Let's go number 9 then. Number 9, of course, I put in The Omen. And I suppose when I talk of these, when I talk of The Omen, I'm talking about, you could talk maybe about all of them if you like. I didn't necessarily pick 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, The Omen 2. I mean, like some people, for me personally, I think The Omen 2 was even better. But you're right. Like it's so you're talking about the franchise as such.
Yeah, when I talk about The Omen, I'm talking about the series. I'm talking about like when I get on to other ones after this, I'm talking about all of them really. You know what I mean?
Not the remake, obviously, with Liv Schreiber. Like that's
no. I don't want to talk about any of the remakes.
No, never.
Not like any of them.
That's not allowed on this channel anyway. It's a forbidden.
But I even spoke to you about this during the week. I mean, that little bastard of a kid, and like and the dad copped on pretty quick. Yeah. And the whole darkness of it, even the clothing that they wore, the suits, and everything was dark. The cars were dark, and the mother, the mother was kind of in on it. You know what I mean? She kind of knew, but she was in denial and protecting the kid. And there was always a bird there. I remember the dogs with the snarl and the whole thing and all. And I just thought it was amazing. And even the priest and the church. I remember, I think one of them comes off it, doesn't he? And he goes down onto the railings. Is that the priest in it? Is it?
Yeah. But it's the spear comes down and gets him. And the thing about it is, obviously, Catherine Thorne, she's the mother, played by. God, I have it here. Where is it? Lee Remick. And then, of course, obviously Gregory Peck, one of the great fucking actors and one of the great faces. You know what I mean of Hollywood. It's not necessarily that she's in on it, but she just doesn't want to believe. Whereas he's on the ball. He sees that this little bastard is, he ain't no fucking, he ain't no good thing. And it's a phenomenal. It really is a phenomenal movie. Obviously David Warner, he gets his head chopped off with the glass.
Yeah.
So many iconic kills in this as well. And then of course you're one of the known, hanging herself. I mean, that one for me was that was weird, because when I saw the head getting chopped off and stuff, I was like, oh shit, like that's pretty nasty. But I found the known one was just absolutely just crazy.
It definitely has its moments. And the sound effects and the music as well.
Yeah.
In it, they're totally on point.
Beautiful, man. And I've always rated it ahead of The Exorcist myself as well. I think, and as I said, for anyone that's only seen The Omen and hasn't seen The Omen 2, go and check out The Omen 2 as well. Like, I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. 666, the number of the beast. Yeah.
Yeah. And when he checks the hair and
all. It's got everything. It's got that old school kind of Hitchcock-esque atmosphere where like the music, as you said, it brings that suspense, and
it's nearly black and white.
Yes,
it's nearly a black and white movie, but it just has that touch of dark color in it. That
does, it's absolutely beautiful, man. It's one of the best horror movies of all time.
And just the way they shot it as well. The weather in it is always shit.
Yeah,
and like the leaves are blown on the trees, and that breeze going through the trees, and the effect of it.
And what about even that scene where the two boys go into the graveyard, like that in the dark, and they're getting chased by these fucking hounds? Like that was very 10 out of 10, man.
That there is my walk home in the dark.
Yeah.
That's my walk home.
Tell me you ain't watching that again, kids, and then try and walk home in the dark without your phone or your music.
But there was no phone or music then. This is me walking home. Like, he couldn't ring me on my mobile later to say, you got home all right, yeah?
But that's what I'm saying. If you took away phones and social media from today's society and you got them to watch that and then told them to walk home in the dark, they'd be the same.
Unbelievable.
Nice. Number 8.
8, I'm going to go for Poltergeist.
Oh, good shout. Good shout.
And again, you could.
This house is clear.
Yeah. Step into the light, Caroline.
Step into the light, Caroline. Oh man, that affected me now as a kid. That was one of them that I was allowed to watch. Yeah. Very.
And it affected herself as well for many years, apparently, as well.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, this movie did have some really, really strange goings on. It was actually one of them that a lot of people like to say that there was all kind of mad stuff on The Exorcist, which there was, but in Poltergeist, there was a lot of crazy kind of stuff going on in the background. And of course, the young girl passed away during this. She had a disease at the time, but a lot of people have made conspiracy theories about it and stuff like that. And they said that the kind of set was haunted and stuff, but it was good Lord, it was a great and the great kind of it was one of those old great narratives, wasn't it, where it was, this kind of town built or this particular house built on Indian burial ground, and stuff that really kind of does make you think, oh shit, this could happen possibly. You know what I mean? Not like a bat coming through and just
I'm telling you now, I'm sitting here now, and as I'm talking about this, I'm actually getting tingles in my arms and everything, thinking about them. Like, it's mad. Like,
but you see, that's what I do. I create that suspense and bring you into it. It's like I am Dracula.
100%. I'm not even messing here. Like, I can feel this going through me.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible movie. And something based on something so simple of white noise, you know what I mean, with a TV. It's amazing how little you need to do to create an amazing kind of suspense story and then build into a great horror movie. You know what I mean? Yeah. Obviously Spielberg's team had a handle on this, so it was quite big production compared to some of the movies that we probably talk about, on this list or on previous episodes. But at the same time, good Lord, it was a Hollywood production done right.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. What are we on? 7? I'm going to put in 7. I'm going to put Interview with a Vampire.
Okay. Now you're
Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
One of my favorite movies of all time, believe it or not.
Stellar movie. Absolute stellar movie. Brilliant story. And the chemistry between the two of them is absolutely incredible. The story of one, so engrossed in it, and the other one fighting against the bad because he sees the good. And I just thought, what a movie. I don't think it gets near the credit it deserves.
The one movie that when I was 10, because that came out in 1994 without me even needing to, look at anything. The one movie that the stepmother and the dad actually allowed me to watch, and even though there was stuff going on in it, you see quite a lot of Kate Bush on women and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of like, do the old thing, bury your head in the sand when you're a 10-year-old and you see any nudity. But then like you're kind of going, have a peek. But yeah, man, this was a phenomenal movie. Wow, what a piece of work. I mean, based on the books, but a lot of people, Lestat. I mean, Tom Cruise actually steals the show in this movie, like hands down. And I mean, this is going up against an actor like Brad Pitt, but Tom Cruise in this is absolutely phenomenal. I say it all the time. Take away your kind of Scientology and all that kind of stuff with Tom Cruise. Very rarely in a bad film. You know what I mean? He's actually one of those actors.
Produced some serious classics.
Oh,
produced classics.
Very underrated actor, but in this in particular, I think it's probably, I dare say, probably his best role. Along with Born on the 4th of July, anyway. You know what I mean? Like it's a phenomenal movie. Like it's you picked it, so talk to me.
Yeah, no, I remember back. Like I think that the costume in it and everything and all was incredible, and like
very gothic.
To see Brad Pitt battling against what he had to do and become, and he goes out on the street and he's catching rats and he's eating the rats for the blood instead of attacking.
Because he doesn't want to eat humans, yeah.
He doesn't want to eat humans on. He's fighting against it, and Cruise is on his shoulder all the time. Stop fighting what you are and what you've become and all this, and but it's an incredible movie,
and a young Kirsten Dunst in it then as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is a very dark movie. Like, I mean, people don't talk about it enough, I think, in the horror genre, because it is quite a horrifying movie, and even to this day, it's quite dark and gothic, as I said. Even the scenes with what's his name? What's that good-looking Spanish guy? He's always in the movies. The old women loved him. He was Desperado. What's his name? Oh, good Lord.
It's not Benito del Toro, is it?
No.
Other guy? I know the guy you're talking about, though, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that is a phenomenal. Of course, I'm going to get it here, so fans can't give a shit. But yeah, like it's Antonio Banderas.
Yes.
His kind of character in it as well, where he's kind of helping them, and then you have that weirdo meeting him down the laneway, just mimicking his movements. That creeped me the fuck out when I was a kid, I gotta say. So it was very dark, and I think you'll know what I mean by this, Niall. Would you dare say that they took a lot of the, in terms of their sets and stuff that they done, even though it was based in kind of New Orleans and then like kind of the darker sides, it was almost very Hammer horror-esque. In the old gothic sets that they had.
I was about to turn around to say it would be perfect for a stage.
Yeah.
Like a Broadway stage movie kind of thing. Because there wasn't a huge, in terms of the sets, it was mainly kind of rooms and, smaller sets and stuff like that. But certainly got it across, but it was just, I think it was incredible.
And a lot of homoerotic kind of references in it as well at a time where it was probably kind of frowned upon, you know what I mean? And there was a lot of kind of gay references now, which obviously wouldn't be a problem in 2021, but at the time, they were really pushing boundaries at that time, the dynamic between all the male characters in it. They had that kind of almost feminine side, but very dangerous characters, and it was really, really beautifully written and more so beautifully acted.
Yeah, especially for those two boys, and it was like it was way out of kilter for those boys as well in terms of their acting dynamic as well.
Absolutely.
So it really tested them in terms of what they were able to deliver.
That one scene before we go when Lestat is in playing the piano in behind the white kind of cloth, and he's just come out of the swamp, after being fucking chewed up by alligators.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
If for anybody that hasn't seen that movie, get your ass. It's Halloween month. Get your ass on that. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, an absolute cracker. What are we
Number
on?
6.
6.
This is the number of the beast now, so you gotta.
6 is going to be a franchise that kept me awake for many a night. The Man That's Above My Head there, A Nightmare on Elm Street, with Robert Englund. Incredible. And it's a weird one as well, because I always like, you know, the school bus that was in 2, I think it was, wasn't it? And the first one was just crazy, like, you know what I mean? And it was just, even the third one was mental. And
nothing was like it though. I mean, like, even though we had kind of, I mean, Halloween it's still one of the scariest movies of Halloween, you know, no pun intended, but of Halloween or of the horror genre. You can still watch Halloween in October now, and you get that beautiful nostalgia feeling, but you also still get creeped the fuck out because it's so dark and it's so well acted, and John Carpenter is just the best of all time. But this took slasher to a whole different level. I mean, basically you've got a guy who was a pedophile that was burned by the whole neighborhood. So there's some really, really darkness behind this story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It just and just the way he's presented, and it, you know, the way it sort of begins, where it's all these kind of like school kids, if you like, or whatever it is, and they're all kind of experiencing these things on different levels and stuff like that. And then it's like they start communicating, go, what was that about last night? And they go, I had that too. And what about this? And it all starts coming together. And then this absolute burnt up lunatic with a bladed glove and a stripy jumper like Dennis the Menace and a hat. And the scary thing is, when the hat comes off, the head, when it has no hat on it, is just freaky as hell, like, you know. But what a franchise. Nightmare on Elm Street stands up to that.
Yeah, Rachel even said it to me. She said it's probably the scariest idea as well. Imagine not being able to sleep or you die. It's like, shit, we all need it, you know what I mean? So
and
although you could probably survive in that, Niall, with the amount that you do. So.
I don't know, but it was a weird dynamic as well, because when I was watching them as well, I'm not sure if they coincided with V. Remember the series V?
Yeah.
Where he was in that as well, but he was actually the good guy. He was the liaison between the humans and the aliens and all.
Yeah.
And he had the blonde curly hair.
Great show. Yeah, great show.
Yeah, so it was a great series. Dynamic. And then to see him in this, and you're going, God, that's that same guy. Like, it's unbelievable.
He's phenomenal, man.
The makeup of it and all was brilliant, you know. Unbelievable, like, you know.
That's a great show.
I put them in there, so thought that was a good one.
Number 5.
I have to put in the Alien franchise. Sigourney Weaver. Unbelievable. I remember at the time when Alien came out first, and Aliens is even a jump from that, but I remember when Alien came out, and that scene where it comes up, when it comes out of his chest or his stomach, and I just remember people, when that came out, it was so shocking. People talked about it for months. It was incredible, like, you know. So yeah, the Alien movie was just
I loved it as well. Sigourney Weaver,
and then the second one
was unbelievable.
She's unreal, wasn't she? Yeah, unbelievable.
And isn't there something there's something to be said as well, isn't there, about some of these actors that weren't big Hollywood directors, should I say, that were choosing women in the, you know, as the main kind of character, as the heroine, if we like, and it kind of way ahead of their time in a lot of ways, you know. Sigourney Weaver, badass. You know, even the chick in Nightmare on Elm Street, badass. You know, Halloween, badass. Like, it was great to see the women get their due as kind of, you know, it wasn't just all about getting your tits out, or, you know, even though a lot of the 80s movies that we loved was that, you know, but at the same time, they were all it was always, the guys were always the ones getting fucked up and being goofy. But Aliens, man, Alien and Aliens, that whole franchise is, it's timeless, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So fantastic, and definitely well worth a watch and go back to it. Like, and to see Sigourney Weaver, what a badass in the second one.
Shaving the head and everything.
Shaves the head, and she has that blowtorch, Gatling gun.
Oh man,
There's all these kick-ass Marines with her and soldiers and all, and she just brushes them aside.
she's fucking awesome,
I mean?
man.
Kicking ass, like,
Yeah,
and that
awesome.
scene when she's in that robotic thing and all. And, yeah. Come at me, bitch. That kind of way.
I love it.
Yeah,
And she's like standing there, that iconic scene where she's there face to face with the alien. It's like, whatever. Yeah, beautiful, man. Beautiful show. Beautiful show.
Next up, where are we at? 4, is it?
4. We're getting down to the business end now.
4, I'm putting in a Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter. What can we say? Jodie Foster. Oh my God. What an incredible movie.
We go back to what you said at the start. Dark from start to finish.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a joyous moment in this fucking movie.
No, and very Jodie Foster-esque, because like, she if you look at a lot of her acting career, like, she's gone through everything that she has played or starred in has been like a tough task. She was in The Accused, remember?
Nell,
she was in The Accused. She was in
Taxi Driver. She was a kid in Taxi Driver. She played a young prostitute as well. Yeah,
absolutely. She's been in some absolute banger movies, but she always plays that kind of like
stern,
where she's thrust into that position of like, I don't know how you describe it, but always like kind of not so much a victim, but kind of nearly secondary to a victim, if you know.
Well, it has that kind of vulnerability to her, to her character, and then she plays that vulnerability really well. You know what I mean? She reminds you, when you look at her, she reminds you of kind of her own Dolores from the Cranberries. You know what I mean? Like real kind of taint, but at the same time, she's man, in this particular movie, like, just because we're coming in cold here, lads. I didn't know any of those picks, so that's why we're doing this, and I have to comment on this one. Again, one of the movies that, without a shadow of a doubt, still scares me to this day every time I watch it, because again, this is based on reality. This is based on something that can happen. This lunatic who was eating people, and then you've got a guy going around wearing girls' skin. Based, of course, on Ed Gein. Some elements of it based on Ed Gein, but again, Niall, I really like this choice because, as I say, it's just a film of pure darkness. You never see sunlight in it. You never see any happy moments, ever any laughy moments. And the end kind of whole scene where she's in this house on her own, and this crazy motherfucker's going around with the night vision on.
Yeah, the night vision goggles and all.
Oh my goodness! When I saw this, I was terrified. Yeah. First time.
And the whole butterfly Avery thing, and all the butterflies in it. And even your man who played Buffalo Bill, he was like incredible. Like,
he was,
when he has your one. What was it? The president's daughter or
down in the well.
President's daughter down in the well and all, and she's absolutely
it puts
crying,
the lotion on the skin.
Yeah,
put the fucking lotion in the baskets.
and the way she captures his dog and everything and all, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was only a little dog. It's like, the fuck, man. That voice even scared you, didn't it?
Yeah. And when she's crying and he's at the top of the well going, and he's howling along with her and all.
Yeah.
It's mad. And then the dynamic between her and Anthony Hopkins is just incredible in the movie. Just and like amazing. That, I'd imagine for that movie for him as well. That scene when they go into the
prison
cage. No, the cage they had with the piano.
Yeah.
There seems to be a piano, doesn't there? And your man, the guard, is strung up on the cage, and he's
like an angel of death. Yeah,
that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just incredible. And even that scene, where they wheel him in with the mask on the trolley to meet your woman to try and find the daughter, and he has the mask on him and everything and all. The dynamic of that scene is. And
it's weird because he's kind of like he's the heel in this movie. You know what I mean? Yeah. But at the same time, you're kind of rooting for him. Like, I remember even as a kid, you're rooting for him because the guards are such bastards. So the movie was really well done, and the story was so well written that, like, they make Buffalo Bill the complete heel. You know what I mean? That you're like, this guy is the guy that you need to get. and you kind of forget that Anthony Hopkins' character as Hannibal Lecter is a fucking psychopath who eats people. You know what I mean? And you're like, why am I rooting for this guy? Like,
and even that scene at the end where, you know, where they ring each other and he's talking to her and he's dressed in all the white gear with the Panama hat on,
and he just goes off into the sunset.
Just goes off into the sunset,
and the credits roll, and you can actually see him walking the whole way. It's great show. One of my favorite. You're picking some all-time favorite movies for me here. I like this. Number three.
Number three, I'm gonna go in with Misery with Kathy Bates. Absolute belter of a movie. Again, I did tell you there is a pattern here.
There's a pattern here. What you're doing, because my listeners are gonna think that Ian just had the best grandmother of all time, which I did. By the way, rest in peace. But it's true. Another movie that I saw with my nanny Marie in Bray, and like, as I said, every Friday. That's why we always put this up on a Friday. You know, it was a big night for us horror fans. You know what I mean? And that was a movie that came on, I believe after the Late Late Show or something like that. And I remember we watched it, and it was this one in particular is one that she stayed up to watch the whole way. Yeah. You know, into past midnight. And I remember going, holy good Jesus. Like, this is a crazy, and there's something about horror movies when there's a writer involved that's quite special, isn't there?
Well, it's kind of not, it's the way that it kind of evolves. Like you actually think in the beginning, you don't realize how dark this one is.
Yeah.
You think she's just looking after this guy who's been in an accident.
Yeah.
And again, it's another, I find these movies that are classics, they're perfect for the stage, because this is basically centered around a bedroom, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's all about the acting and the atmosphere, yeah.
But she's an absolute crackpot, like. And like that scene where he
Annie Wilkes.
Yeah, but that way scene where he tries to escape and she puts him in the bed and he comes through and she's putting this block between his ankles and she just picks up the hammer and you just see the ankle going and you're there going, good Lord.
And your mind is doing the work in the build up to this, because you're going, I know what she's about to do here. Even as crazy as when he does get out, when she goes out to get him the paper and he's trying to be a smartass and he falls and one of the penguins moves, and it's like that always faces due west, you know what I mean? And you're like,
and she cops it. So I see you were out of your bed again, and the way she talks to him like, you know, the girl who would hand you a pot of jam back in the day if she made jam. She talks like this, and she's lethal, like, you know what I mean? And it's
reminds me of my old high school janitor or whatever, like, definitely crazy.
And that bit where she's at the end of the bed and she goes, you know, I'm your number one fan. And it's just, oh my God. And you're just there going, oh.
What a movie.
You're rooting for your man to get out, aren't you?
You're 100%. In no way, shape, or form. Only a psychopath would be rooting for this woman, because she's fucking nuts.
And I don't know how she trained as well. Those scenes where she's talking to him and her eyeballs are nearly coming out of her head.
Yeah.
You know, because you can see the craziness in her eyes. And it's only when that action starts that you actually see how mad she is. But God, what a movie. She's incredible. Like, you know?
I love it. Well, look, we're down to the top two. And what we'll do before we get to the top two, we'll take a little break.
Yep.
And it won't be a break for all of you listeners. Trust me, there's no ads. We are an independent podcast, but we have needs. So we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to give Niall to actually give him time to pick his top two here, because he is picking from a list of 23. So when we come back, we're going to get down to the bottom dollar and the top two horror movies in the shopkeeper's life. So welcome back to On the Slab with me, Ian Kelly. Of course, here with Niall Hogan, and we are down to his final two horror movies of all time. So Niall, I'm sure you've had a chance over the little break there that nobody got to see. And I'm sure you've dwindled it down to two which is really hard, by the way, because my list can change, on a daily to weekly basis. So I know it's a tough one, but we'll let you get through some honorable mentions after, I suppose, just to make you feel better. So
I think the list of honorable mentions will be most people's top 10 probably, so
well, I think it'll be very hard to beat these. So why don't you go for your second, number two?
This is a tough one for me, because for me these are two number ones. One is a movie I grew up on, and I probably have watched it now, not even messing, probably 300 times. I don't know how many times I've even watched it with Ben.
Can I guess it? Is it C related?
No, number two is not C related.
Okay.
No, not yet. It's a man who I grew up on as well, and I put him up there as an icon, really, in terms of how he shaped my life and stuff like that. So at number two, not necessarily one that you might call a horror, but Predator.
Okay.
So
you're getting into the controversial stuff now, because obviously you're gonna have horror fans saying that's an action movie, you know what I mean? But definitely what you're saying here is that there's horrific elements within the.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing about it, if you think it's an action movie, then you have to put Alien nearly in the same bracket and Aliens, then, don't you, really? So I put it in there again, as I said in the beginning. My selections are not necessarily gore and like that real cutthroat slasher type stuff, but Predator is certainly one where it's to me it's so suspenseful, and a brilliant movie. And
well, there's definitely a bit of gore in Predator for sure, but in a different way. In
a different way.
Yeah.
And it rang a bell with me at the time, because at the time, and I still am to this day, a big huge wrestling fan. So I remember when I was watching Superstars and I was watching Challenge, Jesse was there commentating, obviously. And Jesse was this new big movie star. And I remember they were plugging this movie and stuff like that. And I was so excited to go see the movie, and that Jesse the Body Ventura was going to be in, and we knew he was a big badass, And the way he got taken out, the way they cauterized this whole midsection was gone. And the dynamic between him and Bill Duke was incredible.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable, but just a brilliant movie. And
what's your favorite, off the top of your head, what's your favorite quote in the movie?
Well, Jesse's one, "He ain't got time to bleed," was a brilliant.
I mean, that's got to be the best one, right?
Yeah, but obviously the one to get to the chopper obviously is synonymous, really.
So iconic, isn't it?
Yeah, but even your man, even the nerdy type guy telling the dirty jokes, remember he's telling the dirty jokes and the chopper and stuff like that, and Jesse offering them the chewing tobacco and all, and you're all a bunch of slapjaw faggots and all this kind of thing. You know what I mean? For the time, it was just crazy. You know what I mean? It was unbelievable. But to see them getting picked off, and the girl who was in it as well, who played a brilliant part, she kind of was in on it. She knew, you know what I mean, from an early stage. And these guys were constantly getting picked off, and she was the one that was being left all the time. And even when Bill Duke ends up down in the trap and he thinks he has the alien and he's stabbing a wild pig, you know what I mean? And just some crazy scenes in it, but real suspenseful. And especially when it gets dark and it gets into that dark stage with Arnie with the mud and all this.
No, it's phenomenal. And I mean, the Predator is one of the best kind of creatures in anything ever. Do you know what I mean? Even to this day, like, again, a movie I've seen quite a lot of times as well. And it's very, very hard to find. I mean, I've always been a Predator guy ahead of Alien, believe it or not, as well. And I had a cousin at the time who was mad into aliens, and I kind of wanted to be like my cousin. But then, when you get older and make your own mind up, I was like, this Predator guy is far cooler. Would you stop? You know what I mean? It's like, it's a guy in a suit running around. You don't know that at the time, but it's like, this suit is phenomenal. So phenomenal movie. Great choice.
Yeah, so I put that in there, and definitely it'll be controversial within the horror realm. But
that's all right. But we're allowed to do that. So now we're down to the big, cheese.
Well, the number one, or if you want 1A, if you want to call it that, would be definitely Jaws. Without a shadow of a doubt. I grew up on Jaws. I looked over my shoulder every time I was in British Bay. You know what I mean? I had nightmares
And of
about
course,
this
you
movie
live by the
afterwards.
bay now as well. You're only down the road from
Yeah,
from my hometown and Breakout New Wicklow. So
absolutely. But I always remember, like, I was always, it started a fascination with me with white sharks, and I have it to this day as well. I always watch all the, the Shark Week and the Air Jaws and the documentaries, and I'm intrigued by white sharks. And I even said to Ben there a few weeks ago, we were watching Jaws, and I said, definitely on our bucket list. Two of us have to go to South Africa and go cage diving with great whites. I have to see one of them in the flesh for real one day. It's on the bucket list.
I'd rather you than me. You just tell me how it is.
Yeah, I'll send you the pictures.
Yeah.
But it just started a fascination with me. And I remember always, even when I was in school and, you'd be asked to do a project or an essay. I remember I did an essay in third class, and it was about a killer shark that was terrorizing a Florida beach. And I wrote a 4-page essay on this. And I remember handing it up, and the teacher was looking at me like as if I was something crazy. I had wrote this essay on a great white shark terrorizing the Florida beach, and he asked me, how did you come about that? And I said, I was a big fan of Jaws, and I loved the movie, and I'm mad about great white sharks and all.
Just literally change New York to Florida to make it sound better.
Yeah, well, I couldn't go with the story, like,
yeah, so, of course.
Yeah, I couldn't just rewrite the movie, no. But I think
in this lovely town called Bamity instead of Amity.
yeah, and it's Sarah's Vineyard instead of
yeah.
And I always like the movie. To me, like, just I often, you look back at it and you go, they could have went out in a decent ship to hunt this shark down, but he went out in a rickety old wooden boat, and like your man Quint,
the Orca, yeah.
Quint, and Richard Dreyfuss, and I go back, and me and Ben at least once a month we'd look at the making of this movie, and how this movie ever got to the screen, I will never know. Between the mechanical problems with the shark, between the three boys hating each other's guts,
Bruce, Bruce,
oh, but your man, what's his name, Shaw. I mean, him and Dreyfuss just hated each other.
Well, it's a good job it never got into anything, because, I mean, Richard Dreyfuss probably would have ended his life and then there'd be no more. Would have been no more, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I remember when Shaw passed away, Richard Dreyfuss was on the Late Late Show.
Yeah.
And he reconnected with Shaw's family.
I heard,
because he felt he had kind of unfinished business. Because they couldn't stand each other on set, like, and he said he reconnected with Shaw's family and stuff like that. So it was a beautiful sort of closing of the circle and stuff like that. No, but it must have been, and this was Spielberg on the edge. Imagine, like, if this hadn't panned out, all the other stuff we would have never got, because he would have just been blackballed. You know what I mean? And if you 100%. Go and you watch the making of the movie, it's unbelievable.
It's a phenomenal story, and I mean, to me, it's. This is the second week in a row, or third week in a row, where there's been a top 10. Obviously, Ted was on with Greg the other week, and I think he picked Jaws as well. And it's so hard not to. I mean, for me, this is a movie that means a lot to me personally, which we've spoken about before, because growing up in Bray, like, it was, I was only a kid, and in my head, this was just down on that beach, you know what I mean? And my granddad was such a good storyteller that he'd make me believe that was the case, you know what I mean? And that he knew Shaw, he knew Quint and everything. And it was just because he'd love kind of kids letting their imagination run wild, not necessarily in a good way when I think back, but because it fucking terrified me. But no, it was actually funny. True personal story. When I got over to, I think I've said it on a podcast before, when I got over to Orlando and got to Universal, we were there for Universal Horror Nights, and I saw Rachel pointed out the shark where they have the hanging upside down.
Hanging up.
Like the last remnants of the old kind of Jaws ride. Now it's been taken over by shitty Harry Potter.
I was on the ride.
I know, and I didn't get to do it, unfortunately, but shitty Harry Potter came in place of it. So fuck all you Harry Potter fans. It's not their fault, in fairness. Sorry, Harry Potter fans. Put
It's
J.K.
just not
Rowling.
Jaws.
Yeah, it's just not Jaws. But I got really teary eyed just seeing it. You know what I mean? Because it was just that moment where it took me back to being a 6-year-old kid sitting on my granddad's knee watching Jaws. It was pretty emotional
And living in a seaside town.
yeah.
I mean,
Just
so it's like
just one of those things, and it's for me it'll always be number one as well. I don't think it's. I think it's almost impossible to top really when you get down to the bare bones of it. So,
no, I remember even years ago there used to be little articles when I was younger in the newspapers of, great whites spotted off the coast of the UK and stuff at different places and stuff like that and all. And I remember one time actually they pulled a shark out of the canal, didn't they? An
they
old
did.
story back in the day. They pulled a shark. I think it was a hammerhead or something like that.
It was a hammerhead, but people automatically, oh my God, shark.
And I was thinking, this fucker can get up to the canal. I ain't swimming again unless it's a swimming pool. I'm done.
Done. I mean? I was like, I never went into the sea since other than like neck height, and I can feel something below me. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, the sea is not for me. And then you see these videos, like, you remember that famous video of the harbor, the big splashes in the harbor? It's on YouTube, and it's just a big, huge blue whale just literally under the harbor. You're like, why would you fucking do that? Just paddle.
My dad used to tell me stories. My dad was a great swimmer back in the day, and he used to go swimming with my mother's two brothers and stuff like that down to British Bay. And he said they were out swimming one day, and they used to go out a good bit and stuff like that. He was a very strong swimmer. My dad used to do the liffey swim back in the day, and he was out swimming, and the next thing, these Baskin Sharks went by. I don't know if you've seen a Baskin Shark.
I have,
ginormous. But you can tell
I've not been beside one.
But you can tell they're not great whites because they have extra fins. You know what I mean? There's a number of fins I think runs down their flank, and he was out swimming with them, and they were ginormous. But he said the mother's two brothers absolutely shit themselves and shot straight into the beach onto the sand and said they're never going swimming again. But
well, that was the thing. Just a little side note on that as well. The reason Quint, to this day, that I love the character Quint is because he reminds me of my granddad in so many ways. Not that my granddad was a big drinker or anything like that, but he'd always have his pipe. He loved his pipe, and he always has his fisherman hat on. But my granddad was a great fisherman. In fact, I don't know if this record's ever been broken, but my dad has a plaque at home with a picture of my granddad in black and white from one of the local newspapers. I think it might have been the Bray People or possibly the Wicklow People, that he held the record for catching the biggest fish on the East Coast. So it was this weird looking fish. The thing was absolutely humongous, and there was a picture of my nanny's house always of it as well, and I didn't kind of really appreciate that kind of accomplishment till you get over. So he kind of had a boat, wasn't as big, but it was similar, and it was kind of like, shit, there's my granddad on his little fishing boat, and so it was every time I'm down at down at Bray Harbour, like they always get that kind of little kind of feeling of history and kind of accomplishment in the family, like, you know what I mean? So
and that little Bray Harbour is very like the little harbour in the elements of
you know what I mean?
So there's parallels with it,
and especially like Bray now is not the same as Bray then. We had those little kind of shacks and those little kind of
sort of bungalow type things,
like those little lifeguard stations and all on the beach at the time, and you'd see all the banana boats out, and summertime you'd be like, whoa, there was a lot less stone and a lot more sand back then as well. So it's like it's great show. I love talking about that movie and what it means to us.
I always wind up Ben as well, because Ben would go for some of the night swims with the lads down into the cove in Greystones.
Yeah.
And there's a big old sail that hangs out down there. If you've seen him, he's ginormous.
Yeah, I've seen him back in the day.
He's covered in the winkles and all. He's so old now.
He's about 150 years old.
But there's a little sail sanctuary if you go halfway on the Dart in one of the inlets. You'll obviously the baby ones there with the mothers. It's like a I don't know what they call it. What do they call it for sales or something like that? A nursery. Be like a sail nursery and stuff like that. And I always say to Ben when he's going off for a night swim, I said, you always remember now, if the sail's around there's always great whites because that's what they use. And I always put the fear of God up and go swimming, you know what I mean? So, but it's just hilarious, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
it's one of those movies. Like my mother
yeah.
worked in the Savoy Cinema over here in Dublin
Mm.
at the time that came out. She was only probably 17 or 18 years old,
Yeah.
and like she's a phenomenal swimmer. But in the pool, you know what I mean? It's like I'm not getting into the sea ever. When I saw that movie, never ever did I get into the sea ever again. You know what I mean? So yeah, great show. That's a hell of a list, Niall.
It is.
And a hell of a debut on the Slab.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give your list in true King Mo fashion. I'm going to give your list a 5 slabs of meat out of 5. To be fair, I like that list.
Do you want a few honourable mentions?
Yeah, go for it.
Right, I'll go down through them pretty quick. Amityville. I always think horror movies that are associated with a house in any way, that's the focal point, I think are always brilliant movies.
Do you remember, I was only talking to Rachel about this the other night. Do you remember, was it Eddie Murphy that done that joke, or was one of the black comedians and said, why do y'all white people always stay? It's like, you know, the motherfucker told you to get out. Black people would be gone.
Yeah.
Y'all white people stay.
No, what he said was, white people always run towards the trouble, never away from it.
It's like you actually have this voice saying, get out. And you're like, you stay. Why?
Yeah. What you mean get out? Yeah.
What are you gonna do? You'll do nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. One that could have been on the top 10, of course, Carrie.
What a movie, yeah. Stephen King movie, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I had in there The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I thought was a phenomenal movie.
Was a good movie, actually. I've only ever seen it once, but now that you say it, it's a movie that I could revisit, yeah.
Yeah, obviously It, in there, Tim Curry.
Yeah, I mean, that's where my fear of clowns came from. Anyone that knows me knows that I have a bit of clownophobia, whatever the word is, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of clowns, even though Carl Kingwall loves being a clown.
Yeah, Halloween was one that you mentioned earlier, of course. So that would be on the list. And again, it's a flip of a coin to include or not include, you know. The Lost Boys.
Oh, phenomenal
Movie. Hellraiser, of course, with Pinhead.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
You're talking about the 92 one with Gary Oldman?
Yeah.
I will replace that with the Horror of Dracula. Of course, Christopher Lee. Hammer horror, absolutely. But that's okay. I love that movie still. Winona Ryder in all of her youthful glory.
Yeah. One that I really loved until I found out about it, the Blair Witch Project, which I thought was at the time was a brilliant movie because we were sold. It was kind of like our Milli Vanilli. We actually thought they were singing and dancing, but they were actually taking the piss and they weren't doing that. And that Blair Witch Project, remember they sold it originally that it was the real thing.
They done a good kayfabe job on it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that was one of my one that was in there. Psycho, of course. Hotel, and the shower scene is synonymous, you know.
Phenomenal.
And then I rounded it out with 2, The Conjuring 2. Because I liked it because it's based on a true story and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was the one in England where, and yeah, one of the scariest scenes actually in recent modern horror history when you just see that owl lad sitting behind you on the couch. Like, holy shit. That is, like, I'm getting goosebumps now with that one because you were like, what the fuck is going on here?
And when the house starts shaking and no one can get in and no one can get out and all that.
Yeah. Very, very.
It's incredible to think that that's based on a true story. As well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm going to round it out with Quentin Tarantino, of course, and George Clooney from
Dusk Till Dawn.
Unbelievable movie.
More of a comedy horror movie, but I mean, you know.
But what you think starts out as like, you know, just a robbery and on the run to Mexico. And boy, God, does it take a swerve big time.
As you always like to say, it takes a quick, left turn. And of course, in that movie as well, you forget some of the actors that are in it.
Juliette Lewis.
Yeah, Juliette Lewis as well. Yeah, it's what else have I got? I had a little known fact on this one.
It triggered
Danny Trejo, of course, as a
Trejo,
vampire.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Tom Savini, of course, the great makeup artist who pretty much is any of those beautiful, horror movies that you watched in the 80s and that beautiful makeup effects. That was Tom Savini, but he also acted in this, and he has the little cock gun.
Yeah, Salma Hayek.
Salma, oh, good Jesus! Let's not get either of us divorced talking about her. Let's just make sure that neither partner sees this show.
And then of course Clooney, who started the fascination with lads getting big tribal arm sleeves.
Yeah,
we had that tribal arm sleeve that everyone thought was cool, and then everyone went out and kind of got one, and then they regretted it.
They felt that they were going to be a badass having it, yeah. And you were like, okay, so if you're getting a tribal thing, make sure it's at least from your own culture. It's okay getting like Celtic tattoos or Native American tattoos if they fit within your your ethnicity, not your ethnicity, but within your culture would be a fair way. Cheech Marin in it as well.
Yeah.
Of course, when he goes to the titty twister, we got black pussy, red pussy.
Oh my God. What a doorman.
The best doorman ever.
And then remember one minute the band are playing, and the next minute it goes back to the band. The next thing it's all these people carved up into guitars.
It's like, what the fuck, man? That was actually a great movie, and of course Harvey Keitel with his kids basically just fucking riding through the desert.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you watch the TV series of it as well?
I haven't watched that yet. Is it any use?
It's very good. Yeah, your man who's the sheriff in it, I think, is played by it's Don Johnson, isn't it? I think it's Don Johnson.
Michael Parks is the one in the original movie. He plays the Texas Ranger, but
I think in the series, I think it's Don Johnson. It's an older Don Johnson, obviously, but looks.
I got no problem with that. I'm a Don Johnson fan.
It's basically what it is it's basically a 6-part series of the movie. So it's really cool. It follows the movie to the ladder and all and stuff like that, but there's a modern kind of twist in it. Really,
now you got me intrigued. Now I'm definitely watching it. So
and your man who plays Clooney's role, he's a proper slick dude. Like, what I mean? He has it down to a T. Yeah.
Okay, well, you've sold me.
Watch it. It's well worth a watch.
You've sold me. Look,
so that's it.
I think that's about all we have time for this week on the Slab. You made it off the cold table, and I think you've convinced a lot of people. You convinced me of something new now. I always like that. Always love it, especially when it comes to TV series, because I'm a kind of a old school TV series guy. I'm a Twilight Zone guy, and that's me. I'm Dark Shadows, black and white Dark Shadows. Not the Johnny Depp movie, which is pretty good, by the way, but it's a comedy. So Niall, it's been a pleasure having you, and I'm sure we're going to have you on again. Thanks for contributing to the On the Slab Halloween month, because this is our bread and butter, and I'm sure you'll want to come on again.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I hope Carl enjoys it as well. I hope I did it justice.
Listen, you always do it justice, my friend. Always do it justice. Knocked it out of the park. 10 out of 10. Until next time, thank you for watching On the Slab. I have been your host, Ian Kelly, and I have been joined by Niall Hogan. And until next week, horror fans, keep staying fucking scared.